Hello and welcome to a new episode of Teachers Off Duty. We have a very special one today. I'm excited about it. But to get started, let's introduce ourselves. I'm Tell Williams, or Mr. Williams pre-K.
I'm Lauran Woolley, Mrs. Woolley in 5th. And our guest today,
I'm Sofia Bella. I am Sofia Bella.
That's like the eeasiest handle to have to like, oh, what's your handle? I am Sofia Bella.
That's how I am.
Thank you,
what's your handle?
That's
me.
it, babes.
That's me.
So our fun episode is, it is officially Hispanic Heritage Month, or even the term, because we're going to talk about a lot about our identities, and we're going to talk about how even the term Hispanic Heritage Month is controversial. There's a lot of controversy over Hispanic and the use of the term and then Latino or Latinx or Latina. So we're going to talk about that today. Mm-hmm. But it's just, we're going to get started with some fun facts. I think maybe we should introduce the identity of us, though. So I'm Puerto Rican. My mom was born in Ay Bonito, and then her family moved to the Bronx and then to Indiana for some reason. Couldn't tell you why.
Of all places.
The Bronx. She is Jenny from the block, but she was Betty from the block. So yeah, like I'm still Betty from the block. We can use that because it's funny.
It's not.
It's they're
like, no.
Give us the money.
Oh, come
so yes,
on.
I'm Puerto Rican. So who wants to share?
I am Cuban and Mexican. So my dad is actually from Mexico. And then my grandma is from Cuba, La Habana. So then actually, I'm Cuban and Mexican on one side, and then I'm Mexican on the other side because my grandpa's Mexican. So that's all I am.
It's like that's all, honey. That's fun.
I mean, I know I want more.
Give it. I love it.
And then mine is kind of like, a little bit different. Like I am more like European Hispanic. My mother's side of the family is from Spain, from Salamanca, a very small town. And it's a very small percentage of myself, but I still am very proud of that. And I still like, I remember little things growing up here and there and like stories I was told, but like I did not grow up speaking Spanish, which is something I
you
really,
learn
really,
it in school, right?
Yeah. I took all 4 years of Spanish in high school, which I know it's not like learning Spanish in the real world. That's not always how people are going to speak it. But it's, I wanted to try and, learn a little bit more about my background a little bit. But yeah, it's hard for me a little bit because I know some people are, very concerned about people, with, appropriation and things like that. And, although I am white, I have like Spanish in my background, and I really enjoy that about myself, and I kind of have been just in recent years like trying to learn more and more about that because it hasn't been kept alive in my family as much, and I kind of want to stop that from happening. I don't want it to die off and just be forgotten.
And I feel that because like with me being Cuban and Mexican, like my grandma is Cuban, so that's all the Cuban that I have. Like everything behind that is Cuban as well. My great grandma, my grandparents, like my grandpa, all of them going back is Cuban. But my dad is Mexican. So like growing up, the only Cuban I would get was when I was at my grandma's house. And then when I was home, my mom would, like moms, they make what your husband likes to eat. So I would eat Mexican food at home. And I feel that because I try to keep that Cuban alive because my kids, if I marry a Cuban man, we'll see. But as of right now, it's not looking like that. So the Cuban is kind of dying, and then the Mexican as well is going to start getting less and less.
Doesn't that seem so sad? Like,
and
it just makes you
it.
Yeah, like you want to keep it.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, can't really control that.
TikTok with the fish. I want to keep it.
You've
never seen the little.
I want to keep like.
I want to keep it.
It is. It's hard like when we're talking about like. People it's a very personal thing to talk about your identity.
Yeah.
So,
and I feel that way though, because like I never want anyone to be offended by anything I say or do. Yeah. And like, it's coming from a place of love that I'm very proud of.
And learning,
of
love and
that
learning.
background and wanting to learn more and educate myself more on, the heritage of my family. So I totally feel that way. And I don't want anyone to ever feel that way about me.
I would like to be the the person who knows all about this as someone who identifies as Latino, but I don't. And the unfortunate thing is because we're not taught this at all, and there's a lot of history that we're still finding out.
Yeah.
And so this is to say, like, if we say something you're like, that's not 100% correct, call us in. Put a comment down, help us educate ourselves about who we are.
Yeah, please, because we're always coming from a place of learning and growth and wanting to be better. And we're educators. We teach for a living. We want to learn for a living. Yeah. So if there's
just because
something
we're teachers doesn't mean we know it all.
Right. Yeah,
so
right.
We can still learn.
And we don't even know all about our own identities. Like we're still learning. Right. So like I think one of the first things that we were talking about, we talked about this very late last night, was the term Latinx. And because it is used, or it was supposed to be used for inclusivity. So it's, in the United States, only about 23% of people who are Hispanic or Latinx know the term Latinx, and only 3% of people use the term regularly. It doesn't mean that the 3% use it as their identity, though. And so we were talking about that term and why it's controversial. And it's not controversial in a sense of people don't want to use it to be inclusive, because they've polled people that don't like the term Latinx, and they actually said, I'm not using it in place of not respect, but to respect, to respect people who are gender nonconforming or who are trans, non-binary people. We're not using the term Latinx because of that. We're using it because it's a word that didn't necessarily come from us and makes sense to the language that was used to already colonize us. So for a third time, we're being told what to be. Yeah. So this is to say, for me, I'm Latino. I am a cis male, so I'll be using that term. But it's even the name of the month is controversial.
Yeah. Like me, I'm Latina, but I'm a Latinx trailblazer. Yeah. That's my title on TikTok.
Yeah.
And I completely understand where people come from when they use the term Latinx, because they want to make everyone feel included.
Inclusive, which
right?
we should.
And I'm totally for that.
Yeah.
But then I also see the other side of it, where being Latino, Latina, that is Spanish. That is a language.
Yeah.
And at this point, you're changing our language.
Right.
And making it American or English, So when I talk to people, they're Latino, they're Latina, I'm not like, oh, they're Latinx.
I always go based off of how they are identifying, because if I don't know how they identify, I'm going to use the term Latinx when they give me their identifiers. But it's weird because it's not in place of the whole English thing of they, them. It's not grammatically correct, even though it is. To use the term for someone who's non-binary, it's not the same when we're talking about Latina and Latino. There's deeper colonization that happens there. But on that side, we talked about yesterday, if someone sits there and they're like, no, I'm Mexican and I am trans and I use a Latinx, baby, I'm going to use that term for you, whatever you need. I don't care what anyone else says. If that's how you, great. It's just weird that that's even controversial about it. It's not even a term that we can, it's sad. It's
I agree. And that's how I see it. How you want to identify, that is up to you.
Right.
And you are your person.
And that's for someone like me, that's eye-opening to me, because I'm not Latina. And so I, seeing the Latinx title plastered all over everything, you're thinking oh, this is how they people in the Latino and Latina community want to be included or want us to be inclusive, and it's not to some people. And you kind of live and you learn, and you're like, oh, well, okay, that's not right, so I'm not gonna do that. Or it is, or it isn't. And I think that's where some people get kind of stuck. Yeah, you get anxiety because you're I don't want to offend people. So
how do I advocate?
Yeah, how do I advocate
for people,
but not offend at the same time? And I think it's one of those tricky things. And so, I'm in my graduate study, and there's a woman in class that she's Puerto Rican. She born and raised in Puerto Rico, came here for her graduate degree. We're in class talking about the term Hispanic and the term Latino and what those mean. And at 30 some years old, she was never explained. So what I think it means, I think we kind of talked about it. Hispanic is the language you speak. If you're Hispanic, you speak Spanish. Latino, Latina is the geography, of where you're at there, right? So you can be Hispanic, Spanish, and speak Spanish, but you're not
Latino or Latina.
You're not from, exactly. You could be from Latin America, but not Hispanic because you don't speak Spanish. So that's how it was always kind of explained to me. So and that's like how, like when you look at the actual terms is how it is. So you're right. You can have both identities. You can have either or identities. And so that it is interesting for that to be part of the conversation as well. Because it's like, oh my gosh, we just want to know what we can say, like what we can say as our own identity. So I just start telling people I'm Puerto Rican because it's easier for me to just be like.
I've been told so many different things.
Yeah.
Like I've been told like being Hispanic means like your family originates from a Spanish speaking country.
Yeah.
Maybe not that you necessarily speak Spanish. Like that's what I learned it originally as. And then I've heard that, you know, it's you speak Spanish. So that's where like my confusion comes in with my own heritage. It's like I don't know what I am. Right. I'm like my family's from Spain. That's what I say.
Exactly.
I'm like I don't know anymore.
Because it comes down to that. Like I mean, me, I'm both. I'm Latino. I'm Latino. Right. I'm Latina and Hispanic because I'm Cuban and Mexican and I speak Spanish.
Yeah.
So I have both, and it's easy for me to be able to identify for both. But when it comes to like someone who's like, I'm from Spain, whatever you want to call me, that's where I'm from. You know,
right? You know, this is me learning. Before I knew like Hispanic was you speaking Spanish fluently. I was like, well. Hispanic, it says like originating from a Spanish speaking country.
Yes.
And my ancestors spoke Spanish.
Right.
It wasn't carried on through my generation.
Right.
So I never got to learn that as my second language, like, as a second native language.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of stuck. I'm kind of in like in limbo of like, I'm from Spain.
Right.
Or I'm not from Spain, but like my my family's from Spain.
Right.
But like I don't know if I'm Hispanic. Am I? I don't know.
It's the stuff that what was the term that are Latino identities that don't speak Spanish?
Like the term that I don't like, is that the one?
Is it like is it not
the
one
one
to
you
repeat?
said.
The one that was so a no Sabo kid? Is that what you're
yeah.
talking about?
So
yeah.
Can you explain what that is? Because I don't think a lot of people will know what that is.
A no Sabo, I am against it. I strongly don't like when people use the term no Sabo kid, because to me, what a no Sabo kid is basically someone who is raised Hispanic, Latino, and they don't speak Spanish, or they attempt to speak Spanish, and it doesn't come out properly.
Me.
So
all the time.
So and then like for me, when I speak Spanish, I speak comfortable Spanish, and so that means like when I speak to my family, when I speak to my friends, I am comfortably speaking. Now, if I, as a teacher, speak to a parent, it's not going to sound good. And I'm going to be like trying to be professional, but I can't because I've never spoken professionally in Spanish.
Right.
So it like to them, I could be considered a no Sabo kid because I'm not speaking correct Spanish. But I was raised in a household that only, like my dad only spoke Spanish to me growing up. My grandma only spoke Spanish to me growing up. So those are the kids that they're like, really? And you couldn't learn it? But it's not. Yeah. And that's where I'm like, I hate that term because these kids are trying. You're trying to
embrace your identity, your culture. And I always loved that about my family. I've known like for a long, long time that my family was, from Spain. And my grandpa used to tell me like when he was a kid how he would go over his Aunt Isabel's house and he would like his father was from Spain and spoke fluent Spanish, but didn't want his kids to speak Spanish. He wanted them to be Americanized. And so they stopped speaking Spanish in their household. But my mom said like her grandmother spoke Spanish, her great aunts and aunts spoke Spanish. And when my grandpa would go over his Aunt Isabel's, she would not let him eat unless he asked for things in Spanish. So he would tell me this story. He's like, the only thing I ever knew how to ask for were frijoles. And so he's like, that's all I ever ate because that's all I could ask for.
I could say.
Yeah. And so like, those kinds of stories I love. And then like growing up as a kid, like we went to like every Christmas for Christmas Eve, my family we went to midnight mass at a local church. And I grew up Roman Catholic. And we went to the midnight mass and they did the entire mass completely in Spanish. And that was something that I thought was so cool. And I always wanted to, like, I wish I would have grown up speaking a second language. And so that's really what prompted me to take Spanish in high school. And I kind of wish I would have continued. And
Right.
like, you know, I did 4 years of it, so I can
Right.
speak, like I can understand some Spanish, and like I can, like, if someone's speaking slowly enough that I could like take a second to like
Right.
let it
To
register.
process it.
Like, I got some of it. Yeah.
Right, I can pick up some of it, and like I could probably respond a little bit, but like I do not in any way, shape, or form speak fluent Spanish.
Right.
So then that also leaves me in that, like, you know, limbo of like, what am I? Like,
Where I grew up is, I would say, predominantly Hispanic, mostly Mexican and Puerto Ricans. Where I grew up in Indiana, and the racial tension there. Oh, and I hate to use the word Americanized, because like they're, you know, a lot of these people are American. They've moved here. You know, they're in the U.S. Puerto Rico is a Commonwealth. I mean, it's controversial, but it's, you know. So I hate using the word Americanized, but that's the idea of what it is. And the Americanized dream is, or idea is, that you don't speak Spanish, and that you kind of release some of your Hispanic and Latino culture. And I don't think that parents a lot of times do it in a malicious way by any stretch of the imagination. It's like, I saw what it was like for me. I don't want that for my kids.
Country, absolutely.
And so like my I felt like my mom did a lot of that. They're two going from Puerto Rico to the Bronx. That it was literally right the perfect storyline of West Side Story, which happened, right. Puerto Ricans were very much looked down on, and so I think this idea of what that was, and a lot, you know, when she came over in the 70s and 80s, like that was the Puerto Rican culture and idea was West Side Story, right? That was a huge movie, and so. I felt like a lot of our stuff, we'd go to my grandmother's house. They all spoke Spanish there. Like you know, if we want to talk to my grandma, to them, it was in Spanish, not great Spanish. But it was very much like growing up, this part of my identity was, I really had to hold on to it and try hard by, you know, going to my grandmother's house, talking to my grandpa, talking to my aunts and uncles, my cousins, because it's something that was kind of, in a sense, lost on us. And and all this is to say, the reason why I bring it up too is because it is important to know that the U.S. does not have an official language by any stretch. No. So when we're saying we want to Americanize, you know, families who say
it's
this,
like a stereotypical American.
Like you know, that doesn't necessarily mean English. It can mean any language, because that's something I love about the U.S. is that we don't have an official language. But that's the term that's used all the time. And I know growing up in high school, that was used. Middle school and high school was terrible. I wasn't enough of either culture of the white kids or the Hispanic kids to fit in either. I was too othered for the white kids, but not enough for the Hispanic kids.
That was my thing growing up too. Like a lot of my friends, because so in Vegas, the side of town I lived on, the east side of Vegas, which is predominantly Mexican, Hispanic, right? Yeah. Now we're getting more like Cubans and Puerto Ricans and mixed, and, you know, Guatemalans, all of them. But when I grew up, like, it was almost everybody was Mexican, you know? And to them, because of the way I looked, because I'm obviously like, I'm white, like my skin's white. So they would be like, you're not Mexican enough to hang out with us. And I would be like, okay. And then my white friends, they'd be like, she's Latina. And I'm like, am I Latina or white? Which one am I? Because I don't know which one I am. So I would have that problem too growing up. And it's so hard. I think because I went through it, that's why I have the, perception of it. And I see other kids and I'm like, and even just people, not even kids, just adults and everyone. I'm like, you should feel like you belong.
Yes, that's it.
Because I had that problem where I was like, okay, well, they don't accept me, so then I'm just gonna go be with them because, and then I was the spicy Latina with all of them, and I was like, I guess I'll be spicy because I have something going for me, you know. So it kind of, I never knew where I fit in.
Yes.
And I was like, I just want to be me, and like I speak Spanish, I speak English, I speak fluent English. I don't, I don't think that when I speak, I have an accent, but some people say I do. And I'm like, I don't see that. So I just wanted to be me. Yeah. And, I loved being proud of being Latina. And I love being proud of like the struggles and all the obstacles my family faced coming here to be, American. But yeah, it's
Who knew?
It's a big
right. And, you just don't, and I say who knew, and you don't know because we're not told this. We're not
I was
taught
gonna
this.
say I did not have that problem in high school because I was little 16-year-old Lauran was bleach blonde with blue eyes and pale as a ghost. So no, I didn't. I was white. I mean. That's just the way it is.
In Spaniards are. People in Spanish are.
It's a European country.
Right. And we were talking about, so these are the countries, and I want people to tell us these are the ones that are in total the 20 Hispanic countries and one territory that is celebrated during the month. And I feel like one has to be missed because as I was reading this, it's Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, Colombia, Costa Rica, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico, Nicaragua, Panama, Paraguay, Peru, Puerto Rico, Spain, Uruguay. You said it better
Uruguay.
I can't say the ooh. And Venezuela. There's got to be one missing. I don't know. Maybe. So if we name those out and you're like, maybe mine's not in there. Yeah. Let us know, please, because
please put it down
this
below.
was like a official like page of the celebration, but. So I was like, that's a lot. It talks about the LatinX term used. These are like little facts we found. It was dated back the first time in the 1990s. Blew my mind because I had no idea. LatinX was researched in the 1990s.
See,
I thought that was a new term.
I thought it was a new term too.
But it's been around for 30 years.
Yep.
Okay.
And it says only 23%. I think I said that.
23%
in the U.S. No, but it kind of came back up. So something I was reading on NPR about this was that the term was picked up more by industries and commercially than it was by the people.
Okay.
But my thing is, even if one person feels like that is their identifier and that makes them feel whole. I mean, we just talked about how we kind of felt like we were walking aimlessly. I'm like, girl, I'm going to use it then.
Yeah.
The U.S. doesn't have an official language was the other one that I liked. There was one that I found that I really, and that Hispanic, it starts September 15th and goes into October. Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I found this to be incredibly interesting about the controversies behind it, but also like what we do and don't know. And we were talking about our ancestry.com thingy that, and so when I did it, my mother's genes were so strong that it tells you the migration patterns of your family and how you ended up where you currently are, and it only showed the Puerto Rican side. Did not show my dad's side at all. So I'm like, does my dad not know he's Puerto Rican? Like, he's not. But I was like, does he not know this? But then the thing that was heartbreaking to me, and again, no one told me this, was when I got the DNA thing, I was like, why didn't it say it doesn't say my blood is this much percent Puerto Rican. Yeah. Why? Oh my gosh, my mom had no idea she was lied to her whole life. She was not born in Bonito. No, she was. Because of colonization, your blood can't take a test and say Puerto Rican. Mm-hmm. It has to be made up of a couple of different things, and those makeups make that. Okay. And I was saying that it wasn't until maybe 2 years ago or a year ago, I got an alert saying, hey, we've done this, this, and this. And they've now been able to genetically find traits of the Taino tribe and people. And Tainos were the indigenous people of Puerto Rico. Mm-hmm. And so it's interesting to say that because it's like when you look at your place and you don't think you're dark enough or this enough, you have to also remember these countries were colonized. And that's why, these identities, that's why Puerto Ricans can go from blonde hair and blue eyes to, Afro-Puerto Ricans. So it's the whole thing is just like, we were all talking about how we've done in some sort of the DNA test.
And then that's like my ancestry. It's so weird because mine shows exactly where in Mexico my dad is from. They're like, this is where your family migrated, and they've lived there for years, generations and generations. And then you go to my mom's side and they only were able to show me the Spaniard side of it. But I'm like, no, I know my grandma is from Cuba. Yep. My great grandma's from Cuba. My great like this is generations. But because they even have documentation of when they migrated to the U.S. From Cuba.
Yes.
Like birth certificate, everything was there, but it doesn't say Cuban.
Right.
And I'm like, but I am Cuban. But there's no, because of the colonization, like you said, it's just, there's Spaniard, a different makeup. But it's because it's mixed with so much.
When I did I did the 23andMe. Mm-hmm. I didn't do Ancestry. But like, I did mine wholeheartedly expecting to see like way higher of a percentage. Yeah. And then when I got mine back, I was honestly heartbroken because I was like, I'm only this much? And I was like, it was like Spanish and Portuguese. And I was like, that's so small.
Because it talks about like, the area when we were looking at it. It's like this area and of this area.
And then it had no other information. And I'm like, I know the town my family lived in.
Yeah.
I'm like, my great grandpa came from there.
Right.
And like, it's so confusing because like, you're like, oh, well, okay. So then when I have kids, because I mean, obviously my husband, he did his also. He's literally like 70% Irish. Like his grandpa, we did his, like we got him one for Christmas a couple years ago. His was like 99% Irish. Like that's it.
That's wild to
I
me.
know. I was like, oh my gosh.
Like,
That it doesn't happen. Yeah. So my kids are gonna be like a huge chunk Irish because I'm also Irish.
Yeah.
And a bunch of other things because I'm just a mix of everything.
Melting pot.
And I'm a melting pot. And then but I was like, if I'm only like this percentage, then what are like any of my kids gonna be? Like it's gonna die off. And like that's what makes me so sad. I don't want it to die.
And you don't have to. And I think that when we talked about doing this,
just because like you're a percentage of something doesn't mean that you have to forget what your family's culture
and I think
was
it's
or
so
your family's
beautiful
heritage.
to embrace that. I love when people embrace who they are because like there's always two sides of people, the world. You have the people who are mad because you embrace it and they're like you're not enough. And then there's the people who are mad because you don't embrace it. Like how dare you not embrace your culture, or how dare you say you're this but you're not enough,
Yeah.
Like,
and I just
don't
think
snub the people that are trying to support the same culture as
there's
you.
a lot of children who get lost.
And that's what I went through, and I try to keep that alive within my classroom. Like
I love that you teach. Like I know you said you work in like a mostly Hispanic district, right? A lot of kids speak Spanish.
My school is 75% Hispanic.
Okay, I was gonna say I love
that
that you speak Spanish with
your
students.
And I speak Spanish too, so I want everyone to feel welcome. That was my theme. That was my classroom theme last year, and it was literally all are welcome. And I had every skin tone in my room represented, and it was simply because like there's kids that just don't feel like they belong because of other people that make them feel that way, and I can't because I was that person.
Something that I thought was so ridiculous growing up, like even just being that tiny bit. And like when people, in high school, everyone would be like, "Oh, what's your family? And you always do the family tree project." Yeah. Well, okay, so we did that, and like because I took Spanish, and we did a family tree project in my Spanish class, and then we like presented it to the class, and I had presented that my family was from Spain and yada yada yada, and then this other kid in my class he was Mexican, he called me the derogatory word for a Spanish person. And I was like, I never thought I would experience that.
Yeah.
Like, being, white, I never thought I'd experience that in my life. And I didn't think I thought it was really strange because I'm like, you're also.
Right. Well, and
but
because of the tension there, right? There's tension of Spanish colonizing all these countries. And I think what people don't remember is that if in order to be Puerto Rican, some of your blood has to be Spanish. So as you sit there, which is maybe hard to recognize, but you're also Spanish. You're a Spaniard. Like there's part of you that is Spanish. So I think too, it's like there's this weird. I mean, obviously, my huge thing is I don't care how much someone pisses me off. I'm never going to launch any racial slur at someone because that is gross.
Right.
So it's hard for, and I don't know if he said it as a joke or because he understood the tension of what had happened between the colonizations, but it's like I don't know. It's difficult.
I don't know. I honestly that was back in the time when I was still like in the mindset of like, oh, I'm Spanish. Yeah. I'm Spanish.
And that's what I feel like makes kids hold back. Like, well, I just got called this. I will never claim this again. I will never. To me, I will never say I'm Spanish again because I don't want someone to call me this word. I'd rather just say I'm white and boom, not worry about it.
In order to talk about the colonization, you have to rectify to yourself. Part of my makeup is the colonizer. Like that is also. So it's this weird thing. And again, like you said, there's so much that I didn't know. I didn't know until I watched John. I cannot remember his last name. He did a Netflix special on his son, teaching his son. Did you see his son? His son's the Puerto Rican. And I have never sat through an entire Netflix special bawling my eyes out because I was just like, there's so much I was learning about myself that I didn't know even about me. And that my mom passed away 5 years ago. So there's a lot of things that I would want to call her and ask her, hey, what's this? And I can't do that.
That's really a shame. And I feel for you because I'm lucky I still have my grandpa.
Yeah.
Like he's getting up there, so I get nervous. But like I'm lucky I still have him to talk about that with, because that's literally the only connection I have to it is my grandpa. And like even though, you know, my mom was, you know, his daughter, she's not the one with the memories of that. And she like, even though, you know, she would tell me like her grandma would speak Spanish, but that's it. Like she wasn't the one that experienced all of that as a young kid. And I like hearing those stories from my grandpa. So it like makes me sad to think that someday that will be gone for me, you know?
Because you have to hold on to it, you know?
Yeah.
I think one of the hardest things about moving from Indiana to the Philadelphia area is that I didn't have that. I have a love-hate relationship with where I grew up, but something I loved about it is the culture that was there, and that there was like several Puerto Rican restaurants, you know, which like my cousins opened one up briefly, and I loved it. So it's fun to, you know, that I had it there. And then I moved to Philly, and I'm like, if you're from Philly, please let me know the restaurants to go to. But food is a huge thing in the culture. So I think we should each, if you have to like think about it for a moment, what maybe your favorite food from that. So mine is arroz con pollo and coquito.
Ooh.
And my coquito is chef kiss. But my cousins, it's so funny because they'll take old Crown Royal glasses, drink thingies, and drink them because you would never waste it. But that's what they make their own coquito, and then they take off the labels, and then they will like, you know, be like, who was it? $25 who wants one? And I'm like, ship it to Philly. I think that's illegal, but please. Like it is. And if you don't know coquito,
I was gonna say, please explain, because I don't know what that is.
Like, so it is like what is the milky drink people drink around Christmas time?
Eggnog.
It is not eggnog, but that's the only thing I can describe it as. It has none of the same makeup as it. It is just a Puerto Rican milky coconut drink.
I feel like I've
heard of this. It's like a delicious coconut drink that you can have. We usually make it around the holidays. It has nothing to do with eggnog. It's just the only way like American people. Like, you know how you guys drink eggnog during Christmas? It's coquito for me.
Gotcha.
And arroz con pollo, because everything in Puerto Rican is rice.
Rice and
something. Rice and beans, rice and ham, rice and whatever. But
yeah, well, mine from each side. So my favorite thing to eat in the Cuban side is ropa vieja. Oh my gosh. It's basically, so it translates to old clothes. That's really what it translates to, because it's shredded beef. So it looks like, you know, like old clothes. And it has like, it's like in a red sauce, and it has peppers. Oh my god, it's so good, so good. So ropa vieja, and then I eat it with like my arroz con frijoles negro, like, oh my gosh, which is rice, black beans.
I know that.
Okay.
Like I said, I can understand. I can understand. Can't speak it.
Especially food. I'm like, yes, keep going.
Honestly, no, Cuban food. It's so funny because Cuban food is, it's like, to me, because I got it very rarely.
Yeah.
So it's like a delicacy. Yeah. Like when I eat it, like I come to Miami, I'm like, oh, I just love it. Yeah. So like picadillo, which is just like ground beef, and this is the way they prepare it.
It's delicious.
It's so good. So I have a lot of things from Cuba that I'm like a fan of. And then for my Mexican side, I have a lot. I love like enchiladas, which is like rolled tacos with the sauce. I love enchiladas, tacos, you know, like the basics.
Was there like a dish that that y'all made, or that like your grandfather talked about, or anything?
No.
We're gonna find.
That's why when you were like, let's do a dish, and I was like, I really want a dish. No, because like, I want a family dish that we can make all the time. But now
people can comment it, and we can try it. We'll make it.
Yeah, if you are from Spain and you have a dish that your family always makes, please let me know. I want to try and make it.
We're gonna make it with you.
I want to try and make it. Like the only thing I've ever heard of, and I think it's pretty basic, is just paella. Like it's you know, just the collection of random things you have and seafood and
delicious.
It is.
But I mean, I've seen a couple of different people online make paella, and there's actually oh my gosh, her name is escaping me. There is a TikToker. She makes all kinds of different foods from different countries. Like every day she'll make like a new meal from a different country. And awesome. It's beautiful. Like her videos are amazing and like so satisfying. And then she, like, so far, like from what I've seen, is that she's like pretty much hit it on the hit the nail on the head with every single one.
She hit the nail with the head.
Yes. And for Spain, she made paella, and then like people were battling it out in the comments, like, well, paella doesn't use this, it uses this, and you did it great, and it was wrong.
Right.
And then, like, I'm like, okay, well, but they might have been in different areas. Maybe your area makes it like this, or maybe you make it like this.
Which is how it is.
100%.
Right. Too, a lot of different places.
I don't know. Yeah, I want to know a recipe that you guys, because people would ask me that, like, in the Spanish class, my Spanish teachers like loved me just because my family was from Spain, and I'm like, don't get too excited. Like, I don't, but like,
buckle up, baby.
Yeah, buckle up. So my Spanish teacher, she would ask me that. She's like, oh, do you guys like have any traditions, or like, do you do anything? And I'm like, no. Like,
it's like, that's why I'm in this class, so you can teach me.
Yeah. But you do learn, right? Because like, but that's so refreshing, because I knew my celebrations and cultures in at Puerto Rico, in Puerto Rico, but like, it was interesting in class learning about what other cultures celebrated, right?
I love that.
I like Cinco de Mayo, for example. I've talked about it before on the podcast. I had a director. I was coming into school, and I was signing in, and my director was like, "Happy Cinco de Mayo," and I said, "Oh, okay."
No.
I keep signing in. She's like, "Are you excited? Are you gonna go for margaritas?" And I was like, I don't know. And I'm still saying, she's like, you can speak Spanish all day if you want. I said, do you think, I said, do you think I celebrate